Hello, it's Bruce Weinstein, the ethics guy, here with another ethics chat. The question I'm going to address today is there an ethical obligation to vote? Is there an ethical obligation to vote? And I think the reason for this particular chat is obvious. There's a major election around the corner, but there are members of this community who are from other countries, and assuming that you live in a democracy, which actually some of the people who participate in this community unfortunately do not. But in a democracy, well, actually, before we get into talks about democracy, I'm a professional ethicist. I travel around the world giving speeches about ethics. And there's a tendency, I'm afraid, for people in the ethics business, as it were, to be or seem to be self-righteous. And I think with this issue, we run that risk to a greater degree than with other issues. So I don't want to speak about why you have an ethical obligation to vote and why you should be grateful for the things you have. I want to personalize it today and talk about the things that I enjoy in my life that you may also as well. But I want to keep it rooted in my own experience, and I'll explain why, if you can relate to this at all, why you might believe, as I do, that we do have a responsibility to give back to the community, and part of that means voting. So this morning I met a friend for coffee, and we went for a walk in the park. She treated me to a tasty beverage at the coffee shop, and we crossed the street safely and made it to the park and made it home okay and had a great time, great conversation. And as I was reflecting on each point of that journey, I thought about how in some way the state, the city, or the federal government played some role in making sure that I was able to do all of those things safely. I didn't even think about the coffee being poisoned or being served at a boiling hot temperature or being filled with ingredients that might be harmful. When we crossed the street, I didn't think about there being potholes in the road that might result in a car accident, somebody being hurt, maybe me, maybe other pedestrians. I didn't think about the walk light that functioned correctly, that allowed us to cross the street safely. I didn't think about being assaulted in Central Park, which if you lived in New York in the 70s was apparently a constant fear. And in the unfortunate event that I was assaulted, I could pretty much count on the criminal justice system, which of course doesn't work for everyone and it doesn't work all the time, but more often than not, in my own experience, it does work, and I could rely on it to deal with whoever caused harm to me, which again, fortunately didn't happen. So when I think about all of the bounties that I enjoyed just this morning, just within an hour, it's because to some degree the government was involved, mostly by passing laws that prevented harm, that seek to prevent harm to people. And as I was doing a little research for this chat, and I came across a book by a philosopher named Jason Brennan, who wrote a book on the ethics of voting, published by Princeton University Press. And he argues that if you're not going to educate yourself about who the candidates are and what their positions are and what their policies are, there's an ethical obligation not to vote, because you could do more harm than good by bringing about bad laws, unjust laws, electing people who might allow wars to start or create wars. And so he argues that for many, actually, he may even say for most of us who aren't going to go to the trouble of educating ourselves, we have a responsibility not to vote. But I don't think that really applies to the people in this community. And I want to end with words by one of my favorite one of my heroes, actually, the drummer for the band Metallica, Lars Ulrich. As you may know, if you're a Metallica fan, you do know that the band is breaking its long hiatus. They haven't released a studio album since 2008, and the new one, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, is coming out next week. And I was reading in the new Rolling Stone, I've been a subscriber for many years, and there's a Q&A at the end with Lars. And Lars really says it all. He was asked, what's the best part of your success? And his first response is not about the riches he enjoys personally or the bounties of being in one of the biggest and most successful rock bands in the world, he talks about his family. And he says, on a personal side, giving back to your family is the best part of success. And that really says it all. We get so much from our society. Isn't it appropriate for us to give something back? And isn't voting one of the most appropriate ways to do that? Now, in this election, nobody's perfect. And I've talked about in some of the articles I've written for Fortune over the year, the ethical flaws in both candidates. You could argue, and we have argued in this community, whose flaws are worse. But that's the choice that we make. And voting for one of the minor party candidates, in practical terms, really is throwing away the vote. And you can say, well, I want to vote on principle, and that's fine. But when you think about what are the consequences of voting for Johnson or Jill Stein, the practical consequences is that they are so unlikely to be elected that the two people who are contending for the White House, for the presidency, will not have gotten, one of them will not have gotten your vote. So if we're going to vote, as Jason Brennan argues, we do have an ethical obligation to know something about who the two major candidates are and act accordingly. So thank you so much for tuning in to this Ethics Chat. I'm Bruce Weinstein, the Ethics Guy. I'm always keen to hear your thoughts about this chat or consider any topics you'd like for us to address in future chats. So thank you for being a part of this community, and I hope you're having a great day. Take care. Bye now.